We stand here today, remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, Kedosha.
Start to hear. Each one of us must sing the song. Each one of us must do the work. Each one of us must right the wrong. Each one of us must build the home. Each one of us must hold the home. Each one of us. Each one of us.
Kehila, Kedosha, Kehila, Kedosha, Kehila, Kedosha.
It's how we help. It's how we give. It's how we pray. It's how we heal. It's how we live. It's how we help. It's how we give. It's how we pray. It's how we heal. It's how we live.
If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today and remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, remember the dream. If you are a 10, then we're Nitzavim. We stand here today, remember the dream.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. We are going to begin our Shabbat service on page 169 at the bottom as we set our intention for this Shabbat morning. We give thanks to you, O God, for this Shabbat day, which unites us as a community of faith and hope, for the holiness of Shabbat, which can lead us to fulfill the best that is in us. We give thanks. For the memories of Shabbat enriched by generations of our people who observed it and from it drew courage to face hardship and light to banish darkness, we are grateful. We offer thanks to the peace of Shabbat, the day consecrated to family love. O God, our turning to you exalts our humanity. You are the joy of our life, the source of its greatness, its power, and its beauty. Help us, O God, to find inspiration for the coming week. Help us to find peace within ourselves and one another. We continue by opening our service singing Hine Ma Tov, welcoming Shabbat together as one community.
And there's a link for our Siddur, or will be in the chat in just a moment. On Facebook, it will be in the comments, and on live stream, if you're there, right below. Join me in singing Hine Ma Tov. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. 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 How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleikum, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleikum, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleikum, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleikum. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
We turn now to thank God for our bodies and for our souls, page 173, as we thank God for the body that we have and the way that it works together. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom, you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware. We would lack the strength to sustain life before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar umafli la'asot. On the next page, Elohai neshama shenatata bi, my God, the soul you have given me is pure.
Elohai neshama shenatata bi, te'orahi, ata barata, ata yitzarta, ata nefakta bi, ve'ata meshamera b'kirbi, kol zeman sheneshama b'kirbi. Moda ani lefanecha, Adonai Elohai v'Elohei Avotai. Moda ani lefanecha, Adonai Elohai v'Elohei Imotai. Ribon kol hamasim, Adon kol neshamot, Baruch ata Adonai, Asher beyado nefesh kol chai, Veruach kol besar ish.
We continue on page 180 as we use the Talmudic understanding of all of the things that we can do and that we can connect to Torah, how we are responsible for one another. These are the things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, where the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all. We continue with Chatzi Kaddish on page 194, and if you are able, I invite you to please rise.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash me'rabamim, v'abadirach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chaychon v'yamechon v'chayei l'chol ben Yisrael, b'hagana u'bizman karim, v'yimeru amim, yesh me'raba v'barach, le'adam olam ve'amahaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach, Yitba'ar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh, v'yitata v'yitala v'yitala, Shemei d'chudesha b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tishbechata v'nechemata, Damira me'alema, v'yimeru amen. Baruch hu Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed.
We continue with Yotzer Or, page 195. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer Or uvarei choshech, Osei shalom uvarei et hakol, Hami'ir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, Uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, Kulam b'chochma asita, Mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha. Tiparach Adonai Eloheinu, al shavach ma'aseh yadecha, Ba'al me'orei or sha'asita yifa'arucha sela. Or chadash al tzion ta'ir, v'nizkeh hulanu mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. We continue together on page 199. O God, inspiration and guide for all, you have spoken in 1,000 tongues for us to hear. In every land and every age, your children have heard you and imagined you in separate ways. And yet, O God, you are one, unifier of humanity. We give thanks for the sages and teachers who bring us understanding of your will. Gratefully, we recall the lawgivers and prophets, the psalmists and sages of Israel. And joyfully, we remember that from the dawn of Israel's life, we would turn to you and find purpose. May the teachings of our ancestors live on in our minds and their passion for righteousness stir our hearts. Help us to live so that our daily conduct reveals the beauty and wisdom of your truth. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael, be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam may be seated as we continue chanting. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננת לבניך ודיברת בם ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אמת.
Page 203. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, אוסף אלה, שירה חדשה, שבחו גאולים, לשירך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו, והמליכו ואמרו, Adonai Eloch, le'olam va'ed. Tzor Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, ufedechinu b'acha, Yehuda v'Yisrael. Oh, Aleinu, Adonai tzivot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gah Yisrael.
Amen. We continue with the Amidah on page 205, and if you are able, I invite you to please rise.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imatenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov. Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'chonei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Ahava Pimahot, U'mevi Geula Libnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo Ve'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Magim, Baruch atah Adonai, Magid Avraham Ezrat Sarah, Atah Yimor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Atara B'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Marina Gashem, Mechalchel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayeh HaKol B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech noflim v'rofech oholim, umatir asurim, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות ומן המלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. Page 208, we continue with the Kedusha. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב היה נביאך, וקרא זלזל ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ, כבודו, אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מטיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו וכו ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד לך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. We continue rejoicing in Shabbat with Yismechu, which is on page 211.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם יספרו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשת שבת, חמדת ימים אותך רצה, זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת.
We continue together at the bottom of page 211. The meaning of Shabbat is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live under the tyranny of things of space. On Shabbat, we try to become attuned to holiness and time. It is a day on which we are called upon to share in what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Page 212. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. We praise you, Adonai, whom alone we serve and reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha be'ira na'avod. We join together on page 216 as we sing together our prayer for peace.
Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Yeah, la 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 la. Yeah, la 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 la. Yeah, la 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 la. Yeah, la la yeah, la 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 la. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom. Tova uveracha. We take a few moments now for our own personal prayers. Yehu leratzon imrefi, imrefi, ve'yon libi lefanecha. Adonai Tzuri, Adonai Tzuri, V'Lohali, V'Lohali, V'Oseh Shalom, Shalom Bimramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru Amen. Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Amen. Oseh Shalom, Shalom Bimramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru Amen. Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Amen. It's time now to study our Torah portion, Ki Tisa. And in a moment, we're going to have our share screen up with a section of our text. Actually, a really pivotal moment in our text. Ki Tisa has so much in it, I guess, as every Torah portion does. Today, we're going to focus on a part that sometimes we avoid, which is the moment where the people insist and Aaron makes a golden calf. And we're going to do that. I think what I'd like to do is start by looking briefly at Exodus 20, when we receive the 10 commandments, focus in on this one commandment about not having other gods and idols, and then thinking about what happened at this moment in chapter 32 that led to a move towards idol worship. Okay, so we're going to start. This is ambitious, I know, but we're going to move fast through the beginning, and then we'll get into this week's Torah portion. So if we look at Exodus 20, it's boxed up there on the top. We read the commandments against idol worship. And Dimitri, will you read Exodus 20 for us in the English?
Yes. You shall have no other gods beside me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the eternal, your God, am an impassioned God.
Thank you. It goes on, but I think it's pretty clear, pretty explicit from the 10 commandments that worshiping anything at all, physical or in nature, other than God, is prohibited. And we also know that all the Hebrews who were present at Mount Sinai said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we hear and we will do, we accept the covenantal relationship, right? And then Moses stays up on Mount Sinai to get the unabridged version of the Torah, right? Maybe the 10 Commandments is the abridged version of the Torah. He is gone for 40 days, and the people start to get very anxious and worried. They're not really sure what happens, and chaos ensues. So let's read chapter 32, verses 1 through 6, and then we're going to look at unusual for me, all modern commentaries to help us put this in our own context today. So Anna, will you read the Exodus text for us?
When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that man Moses, who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." Aaron said to them, "You men, take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." And all the people took off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. Thus this he took from them and cast in a mold and made it into a molten calf. And they exclaimed, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron announced, "Tomorrow shall be a festival of the Eternal." Early the next day, the people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. They sat down to eat and drink and then rose to dance.
Well, certainly we know their anxiety was allayed, right? They got what they needed and wanted and were no longer anxious. And yet it's hard to pretend that Aaron didn't do what he knew was wrong, but also perhaps in his mind necessary to placate what was going to become an angry mob. And there are so many different midrashic interpretations to help us, explain Aaron's actions. Generally the feeling was that there was an angry mob that had already killed some of his people who worked with him and were saying to him, "If you don't do what we say, you're next." But nevertheless, we have this moment where just a few chapters ago, the Hebrews were really in for this covenantal relationship with this God who they could not see or hear, though they had heard God at the 10 Commandments, and now they're wanting to have something physical. So what is this all about? We're going to start with modern commentaries, Martin Buber. Andrew, will you read the Martin Buber for us?
Moses' mysterious connection with the unseen God must have already been a source of constant discussion and doubt among the people. No, they were leaderless since he had left them, and his prolonged absence created great anxiety amongst them. And now, to cap it all, the man has vanished completely. He said that he is going aloft to the God up there when we need the God down here just where we are. But he has not come back, and it must be supposed that God of his made away with him, since something or other between them was clearly not as it should have been. What are we to do now? We have to take matters into our own hands. An image has to be made, and then the power of God will enter the image, and there will be proper guidance.
Thank you. Right, so here we have Martin Buber imagining what was going on, what the conversation was, what their great need for stability and leadership led them to. They see, when Moses explaining what was going on, they seemed connected and confident about this, Adonai thing, right? But now that he's gone, they worry that maybe Moses is gone. Now what do we do? Right? We don't actually know where God is or where to go. We've always had a temple. We've always had physical manifestations. Think about Egypt, right? To represent what God is. Now we don't even have this guy whom we kind of, we know he wasn't God, but we think of him as the emissary to God. He's gone. We are completely lost. And by the way, we've left home, right? We've crossed the water. There's no turning back. We need proper guidance, right? So Buber's commentaries gives us a sense of perhaps the angst and the sense of chaos that the Israelites were feeling. Okay, we're going to keep going. If you could scroll up, Joel. Thank you. Okay, so modern Israeli commentator Nechama Leibowitz, she asks the operative question for us. Eduardo, would you read that for us?
How was it conceivable that 40 days after the Sinai revelation, with the commandments, I am the Lord, thou shalt have no gods but me, still ringing in their ears, they should seek other gods? Evidently, the Torah wishes to impress us for all the time that such a thing was conceivable. The assumption that people who have scaled the loftiest heights of divine communion are not capable of descending into the depths of depravity is without foundation. Miracles, however awe-inspiring, cannot change human nature. They can only momentarily shake the human soul out of its everyday concepts, but they cannot in themselves affect a lasting transformation.
Right, so we look to the miracles as the thing that is most inspiring in the biblical story, but moments like this remind us that miracles are not sufficient enough to ground a religion, right? Or a spiritual relationship with God. So it feels like this story is here early on to remind us as a cautionary tale that we can't rely on the big flashy moments to hold people together. There's going to have to be something that is deeper and more thoughtfulness to maintain, right? A charismatic leader is great for bringing the crowd in, but what happens when that charismatic leader is gone? If there's no substance underneath, the whole thing is going to fall apart, as it does in this moment of the golden calf, right? So Rachel Mikvah looks at the Hebrew here, the commandment actually from Exodus earlier on, Lo ta'aseh lecha fesel, do not make for yourself an idol. She says, don't read it instead, not like don't fashion an idol for yourself, but instead do not make yourself into an idol, right? Don't transform yourself and see yourself as that power. Dimitri, will you keep going with the Rachel Mikvah?
Seeing in this light, we see that idolatry is far from vanquished. We consistently make our own concerns more important than God's. Even our religious service can become self-serving rather than God-serving. A pick and choose feel-good activity that turns our own emotions into idols. We forget that the goal of the worship is to give unto God, not to receive.
Right. This is certainly a critique of us as moderns, right? Unless we are more traditional Jews, that people want, we love band Shabbat. I mean, I love band Shabbat too, right? But we want a service that inspires us and engages us, as opposed to a more traditional perspective of we worship God because it's our obligation to do so, right? And so for Rachel Mikva, this idea that the Israelites were more worried about what they were thinking and how they were feeling, rather than thinking about God commanded us to not bow down to idols. And what's the first thing we do when we get anxious? We need a security blanket, right? We need a physical image to bow down to. We are not yet disciplined, not yet self-aware enough to live in that feeling of uncertainty then, without rushing to do something we know was not a good thing to do. Okay. So Eugene Borowitz continues this conversation, helping us think about what our obligations are to God or a higher power, or a greater context of our Jewish faith versus our own personal needs, and what's the balance between the two. Jerry Jacobs, will you read the Borowitz? I had Joel make it bigger, so I couldn't really see the screen. So maybe you can see the screen now better too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We need a little reminder of who we are and what is in our minds. We are bursting with self-consciousness, but prayer has to do with consciousness of others, of that ultimate, which is not ourselves, yet in terms in which we can best understand ourselves. Prayer leads us beyond the confines of the ego to contact with the holy. It helps us reach further toward the sacred so we can properly appreciate whose partners we are. We spend our days gaining and expanding, plotting and executing. We work at exploiting opportunity. Prayer radically breaks our routine. It is an antidote to our compulsion for mastery. God rules, not we. Hence, we need to stop our manipulative activity from time to time and humbly renew our sense of ultimate reality.
Thank you. So, Rabbi Jurgen shared a reading during the Amidah from Abraham Joshua Heschel about Shabbat being outside of time, and that's our moment where we praise God for creation as opposed to trying to create ourselves. Borowitz is expanding on this idea that we as praying people, we as people in relationship with the Holy One, have to sometimes give up our desire, our compulsion to be in charge and in control of every single thing, and allow for things to happen, for the ultimate God to be the ruler. I think this is, as I said last night, we're a week away, I guess, from the anniversary of the COVID-19 shutdown, but from Torah portion perspective, last year when we read Parsha Ki Tisa, that was the first Shabbat that we were on live stream. Like, we had made it through an entire Torah cycle, not physically together, not face to face, which is shocking and distressing. And yet we know that there are things beyond our control. We have experienced that this year in ways that maybe many of us could never have imagined. It's a potent reminder. We can really empathize, I think, with the Israelites standing at the bottom of Mount Sinai, feeling totally out of control. And yet some people choose to follow the rules as a way to maintain control and feel relaxed. And other people need to push against those rules, right? They need to try to regain control for themselves. It seems that the Israelites at this moment are not content to do what they were told. They feel very overwhelmed by that and are pushing back. I love this Ralph Waldo Emerson piece. It really speaks to me in this moment. He wrote, "The gods we worship write their names on our faces, be sure of that. And we will worship something, have no doubt of that either. We may think that our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of the heart, but it will out. That which dominates our imagination and our thoughts will determine our life and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we are worshiping, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming." right? We talk about being created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim, and aspiring to this higher purpose. And so when we think about this moment in the Torah where the Israelites take off their earrings, their gold, their most valuable possessions, and they fashion it into a physical idol to worship, it is, it's not very abstract, right? It's very concrete line from being willing to worship a greater power in the world beyond our seeing and knowing and comprehension versus our innate desire to be more narrow and more small. So as we chant or read, this section of Parsha Ki Tisa, let us remember that it's not unusual or unnatural for us to want to be in that more concrete, more physical world, but that there is great reward and sense of meaning in our lives when we are able to move beyond what is right in front of us and consider the greater good and also the greater power and force that's in the world. Okay, so I believe Rabbi Jurgen is there she is.
Our blessings are on page 250. And we're not reading what's in the box. We're reading the Exodus 32, 1-6. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach, Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Vayar ha'am ki voses Moshe l'redet min hahar, v'yikahel ha'am al Aharon vayomru elav, kum aseh lanu Elohim asher yelchu lifanenu, ki ze Moshe ha'ish asher ha'elanu me'eretz Mitzrayim, lo yadenu mehaya lo. Vayomer alehem Aharon parku nizme hazahav asher ba'oznei nitshechem beinechem uvnotechem veheviu elai. V'it parku kol ha'am et nizme hazahav asher ba'oznehem ve'aviu el Aharon. V'yikach mi'adam v'yatzar oto b'acheret v'ya'asehu egel mi masecha v'yomru ela Elohecha Yisrael asher ha'elucha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Vayar Aharon vayiven mizbech lifanav vayikra Aharon vayomar chag l'Adonai machar vayashkimu mi machorat v'ya'alu olat vayigashu shlamim vayashev ha'am le'echol v'shato vayakumu litzachek. And our closing blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. We continue now with these words of Torah on our lips as we come together for Misha Berach, our prayer for healing, as we think of those who face the future not fully whole, those who are in need of healing of mind, of body, and of spirit. As we see their names on the screen, we think of those in our community and our extended community. As we also think of those who are in our hearts, we take a moment now.
Misheberach Avotenu Mikor Habracha Laimahotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach Imotenu Mikor habracha lahavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirits, and let us say, Amen. Amen.
Amen. We continue now with the concluding portion of our worship. Aleinu can be found on page 283. And if you are able, I invite you to please rise.
Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula liotzer breshit, shehu samcha kenu yached et shemo, v'gor aleinu v'amlich malchuto, v'anachnu chorim u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
You may be seated. As we turn to page 291 for our memorial meditation, we note with sadness the death of Edward J. Robinson, father of Lori and Jim Lefko. 291. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were, in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life, I skipped a whole bunch, sorry about that. I'm going to go back up. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. Our thoughts turn now to those in our community who have died at this time in years past. As we mark their yard sites, we remember them. Abe Alperin, Nelson T. Alter, Richard Appel, Edna Shermack Baruch, Ann Baskin, Caroline Strauss Bodenheimer, Dr. Howard Britton, Anita Crystal Buckbinder, Lee Ronald Cantil, Lewis Cooper, Joe Davis, Jacob Dureski, M. Leo Dubinsky, Albert Farkas, Solomon Feldman, Joseph Fisher, Marjorie Flesch, Charlotte Cushman Friedberg, Herman R. Friedson, Irving Gindey, Julian Glass, Marilyn Goldberg, Irving Goldman, Sam Goldman, Edward Goodman, Harry I. Goodman, Alan Greenberg, Sue Holland, William Horowitz, Harold Hughes, Lorenzo Iacano, Pat Jackson, Margot Kempler, Jerome Kerman, Morris Klein, Major General Retired Stanley Kolodny, Alphonse Krawitz, Naomi Lieberman Lauderstein, Gladys Lazarus, Eva Levinson, Jim Levy, Barbara Markey, Michael Markey, Dorothy Marks, George Miller, Bertha Feldman Moss, Lloyd T. Munter, Milton Munter, Etta Nathan, Esther Nichols, Lena Patiala, Molly Perchikoff, William Pordozer, Fanny Pollock, Tobias Rakobi, Michael Reagan, Joan Reichert, Richard Rice, Tilly Ricklin, Will Rips, Gerald Rabinowitz, Diana Rodriguez, Goldie S. Rosenbaum, Belle Rosenberg, Rose Rubin, Shirley Evans Shafir, Sylvia Schulman, Ellen Schwartz, Joseph Shanfield, Nancy Belden Sherman, Sherry Sherman, Paul Simon, Faye Sinkin, Donald Smallwood, Leo Sussman, Herschel Swedlove, Ermila Tammy, Bernard Truhaft, David B. Vinson III, Mamie Ray Washer, Jerome Wank, Florence Wolf, Frederica Wolf, and Ralph Zork. We also think of those who died this past month, whose families are in a mourning period of Shloshim. Remember Michael Mickey J.C. Roth, Betty Lee Neinschweinder, Francis Vogel, Bernard Bernie Nathan Bornett, Nancy J. Smallwood, Seymour Palins, Dr. Eleanor Bitsy Comet, Jenny Schoenbaum, and James Dix Jr. We also think of those who've died this past week, whose family are in a mourning period of Shiva. Remember Dorothy Miller, wife of Gerd Miller, mother of Ronald Miller and Janice and Patrick Claypool. Remember Alan Brightman, brother of Myra Brightman and Ross Frapart, husband of Kathy Brightman, uncle of Lloyd Diaz, Sarah and James Botello, and Rachel and James Buslon, and a multitude of cousins, nieces, and nephews. With all of these names and those which are in our hearts each and every day, we rise together for Kaddish Yatom as one community, page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'imromav, u'ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, amen. You may be seated.
Our closing song, I'm changing it up, Rabbi.
Oh, good. I'm glad you jumped in then.
Yeah, no, I know. Our closing song is Adon Olam on page 321. We're going old school. Join with me. Adon Olam asher balach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'ed nasa v'chepsa kol azay melech shemo nikra v'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimlok nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yiyeh b'tifara v'hu echad v'ein sheni lehamshir lo le'akbira v'li reishit v'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'ham yisra v'hu eli v'chaya go'ali v'tzor chavli v'yitzara v'hu nisi umanos li menat kosi b'yom ekra b'yado afkir ruchi ve'et ishan ve'aira v'imruchi b'geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira. Shabbat shalom. I can just hear the good organ chord.
Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
You did a good job, Rabbi Yergin. He made it through.
Shabbat shalom.
Left. It was amazing.
We had help.
So great. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay safe.
Yes. Thank you.